Hello, friends, and welcome to this week's episode of Not Your Mama's Podcast. The title of this episode is Survival Tools for Administrators and Teachers. In this episode, we are speaking with Daniel Dolinsky, who is a retired Lieutenant U.S. Secret Service and former coordinator of emergency management, safety, and security Pinellas County Schools. Daniel's personal mission is to educate people within organizations about what to do in an emergency situation, such as an active shooter, fire, or bomb threat. His background and experience is an individual tool to train people and help increase their confidence in responding to a threat. It is always better to be proactive and prepared in advance for a situation that may occur. He also has a book called The First 5 Minutes, School Shooting Survival Guide for Administrators and Teachers. Daniel, it is such an honor to have you on. There have been so many active shooter situations going on in the schools lately that I feel like I've been hearing in the news. So I'm really glad to have you on to discuss your book, tips that we need to know, how to respond in a threatening situation. But before we dive into the topic today, can you give the audience a little bit more about your background and how you got to where you are today?
Yes, Christina, thank you so much for having me on. And a little bit more of my background. You explained already, 24 years with the Secret Service. And while I was with them, I was fortunate enough to have a dog, a bomb dog. His name was Korak. So I was a canine technician for them for a while until he retired. And luckily, when he retired, I was able to keep him. So that was fortunate for me. He became a very good house pet. After that, I moved down here to Florida, and I was just going to retire and, live on a beach. And, with an alpha personality, it doesn't work out too well. So I was told, look, you better get a job. So I just decided that just something opened up with the school system, and it looked perfect for my resume. So I applied there. It was a coordinator with their emergency management system, not realizing that I assumed when I retired, just retired people move to Florida. No. A lot of people moved to Florida, and a lot of people in Florida have children. And the district that I covered had over 100,000 students with 140 schools. And I was it. I had no staff, no secretary, nothing. It was just me that dealt with the number of students, teachers, and administrators we had in the number of schools. So it was kind of trial by fire, but I was fortunate enough to have some autonomy where I was able to at least change some things around and dealing not only with administrators and teachers, but with a lot of parents. Because as we found out, and as people out there in the audience have children, I don't want to say helicopter parents. Look, I have a son in high school. He's 16 years old. And obviously, I want to keep him safe. But when I go to some of these schools, and I'm going to concentrate mostly on elementary schools, because middle and high schools, it's a lot different than when I was younger. Now it's the high schools are big. These kids are so mature. It's like being on a college campus, and these campuses are so big. And middle school is now where high school used to be. So I concentrate more on elementary schools. And obviously what happened at Sandy Hook, and more recently what happened in Uvalde at the elementary schools, that's where I've been concentrating on. And when I meet with these parents, I try to explain to them, they're the ones now, especially here in Florida, but across the nation. But since I live in Florida, I can explain, I relate more to what's happening in Florida. Is that parents have to push this kind of thing with school boards and with their legislatures on what they want in the safety program at their schools. Mm-hmm. Now, in some respects, legislatures have already passed certain things. And the reason I left, I might as well talk about that, the Pinellas County system, because after Parkland, which was Marjorie Stoneman Douglas High School, where they had a shooter there, and after that incident, Florida legislation decided that it was better for law enforcement to take over the safety and security of schools. And I'm former law enforcement. I completely disagreed with that, because to me, law enforcement is reactive. They're not preventative. They're not in a preparation business. Yeah. They're there to react and come and help you. So I disagreed with that and thought, no, I'm not suited for that. I disagree with some of their policies. And of course, when you have, whether it's a new administration, anybody new come into something, they want to change things, whether it's a new boss or a new administration, we got to change things. Can't keep things the way they are. So what happened was I will tell you, and I'm sure you already know, and your audience should know, that when an active shooter is on campus, actually in the school should go into a lockdown. And what a lockdown means is that the classroom doors are locked, which they should be already. Our state here, at least, my county at least does that. And I'm hoping across the country they do that. Classroom doors should be locked during learning time. You lock the door, you turn off the lights, you cover the windows, you have the children sit on the floor away from the window, usually in a corner, turn off your cell phone or at least silence it, and just be quiet and wait for the good guys to come, and they will eventually come. What happened
that's so scary.
And I try to explain because I'm gonna tell you a second option here, and I hate to use the word option, but that's what it's called. Instead of going into a lockdown, what some teachings out there have said is, let's give the teachers options. Let's give them an option of what's called run, hide, fight. And run, hide, fight was created by the Department of Homeland Security for businesses. It wasn't created specifically for schools. Some of these security experts have said, well, let's use it for schools. High school, maybe. But what happened at Marjorie Stoneman Douglas didn't turn out so well when they tried this run, hide, fight, or had these options, because, and I'm going to throw a lot of information out at you. Parkland, what happened was they had done a lockdown or an active shooter drill a month prior. So when this actually happened, when the real active shooting happened, they at first thought it was a drill, because most people are in denial when something like that happens. I mean, You don't think a gunfire at your school, and this thing is like, I'm sorry to say, it's an elite, basically university kind of campus. So you wouldn't expect something like that there. Anyway, to continue, at Parkland, the fire alarm, I think the fire alarm went off accidentally. Some say it was pulled. They never trained for that. So now they hear the fire alarm and they hear the shooting going on. They're really confused. Should we go out? Should we stay? Should we lock down? And it was a lot of chaos. And what happened was some of the teachers decided, well, I hear shots at the other end of the hallway, so we're going to run. Let's take my students and run. Well, they made the mistake of what they were hearing was echoes of the shots. Yeah. And they actually were running towards the shooter. So this idea of options-based training, which means that they're giving the teachers the option. So as a teacher, try to put yourself in their place. Teachers have they have the toughest job now, not only with pay, with COVID, with all this stuff that's happening. Now you got to be involved with, some kind of active shooting. Yeah. So instead of locking down, I say instead of, the option is you can lock down, or here's the option, you could run with your students. All right, high school, maybe they're adult enough, they can figure it out. If they want to run, okay. Middle school, I'm a little 50-50 on that, but elementary school, definitely not. But you're giving the teachers this added pressure of deciding, okay, yeah, I'm pretty sure the shooter's over there. Come on, kids, let's go. We're going to run out of here. And you're talking 25 or 30 kids in these classrooms, tiny children who are going to hear some really bad stuff, who are going to see some really bad stuff, who are more than likely going to panic. And, just little kids are going to, some of them are going to refuse to go. And they're going to say, hey, my dad said something like this happens, I don't go anywhere. We're going to lock down. So to put the pressure on the teachers for that is absolutely ridiculous. It's outrageous for that to happen. It's bad enough that I'll give you one example of how my school system dealt with this. When they would have a 3-day conference, which was a yearly conference before school started. You'd have 3 days, you'd bring in teachers and administrators, and for 3 days, they would talk about education. Well, the amount of time I got to talk about security was 45 minutes, and that was it. So I'm up there just spewing out all kinds of stuff at them. All right, now we got to go back to teaching. And I understand, because I don't know how other states do it or counties do it, but in Florida, it's a grading system for each of these schools, A through F. Well, if you're a D or F school, you're in big trouble. You want to get that grade up. So they're under pressure to continue to teach. A fire alarm, at most, even in a big school, 20 minutes. Everybody does fire alarms. They do it once a month. You go out, you wait outside for a little while. Okay, the bell rings. All right, we're back in. Let's start teaching. Active shooter drills, the best I've ever done is 30, 35 minutes. And that's saying something. That's only because they usually pre-prepare, which I disagree with. But you're talking 45 minutes, probably to an hour for an active shooter drill, because to do it properly, you need to make the announcement. You need to have everyone locked down. At the end of the drill, do not make an announcement and say it's over, because the bad guy could be holding somebody hostage and bring somebody out. Yeah. So now you have to go through and unlock the doors physically and let people out and tell them, wait. If it's a huge campus, wait until we got everybody, unlocked, and then we go back to teaching. So I understand these teachers, they dislike active shooter drills because it takes so much time away from teaching. And I can understand this. I've got papers to do. I got homework. I got a test coming up. The pressure is enormous, especially if they got pressure, again, with bringing the grade of the school up. So yes, it is a balance that has to happen. And as more and more, I say more, you kind of avoid that word, but it's going to happen again. The reason I wrote the book, I was very upset after Uvalde. I mean, obviously being with law enforcement, but that wasn't the whole problem. That school was, from beginning to end, it was really bad. Everything went wrong. I mean, all the way up to the end. So that's the reason I wrote it. My wife said, look, you have to vent. You got to get something out there. So I never wrote a book before. I didn't know what that guy was doing. Anyway, I just wanted a short, it's only 77 pages. It's a short, practical handbook / guidebook that anyone can look at quickly and know what they need to do. I did not want to write this 200 or 300 page administrative guidebook with every situation you could possibly come into in the safety of a school. I wanted to concentrate on, look, bad stuff is going to happen. When it happens, this is what you need to do, and have the confidence to do that, and help is on the way. So the reason I named it the first 5 minutes, the FBI statistics, and it takes a while for them to build up the data for that. So it's not something that's current. Active shooter shootings themselves take between 3 to 5 minutes. Okay. So within that time, you're on your own. Everybody's on their own. So
I have a question.
Yeah.
What do you think about teachers having guns, or not law enforcement, but security there already has the gun to shoot an active shooter? Because you can have the doors locked, but can't they shoot at the door handle and unlock the door and come in and start raging bullets at the classroom and the students? I mean, in my opinion, I feel like there always needs to be someone at the school, guarding the school, ready to take down a shooter before the shooter takes down anyone.
Good question. And I agree with you. I disagree with having teachers armed because the training it would take way too long. It would take much too long if they've got to be at the same training level that you have a police. However, having special resource officers, or what we call SROs, armed at the schools is a very good idea. The problem is, because of the riots we had with Black Lives Matter just a few years ago, and this to fund the police, you've had a lot of mostly students and young people say, no, I don't want the police in here. I don't trust them. Do not want them in the school. It's the parents who usually, I'm hoping, push back and say, no. We want an armed person in the school in uniform. So if something happens, then they will, be able to at least engage the shooter. It's a good question, and that's my opinion on what should happen. I
feel like it's only logical. You can't hold the teachers, like you said, the training for the teachers is going to be way too much for them. They already have a load. And it's not their responsibility. Their responsibility is to teach the kids and focus on what their job is. They don't need to be like the bodyguards. No. But I just don't understand why it's such a hard concept to just put, trained, background checked, certified, armed officers at the school, a minimum of 2, to shoot back. I don't understand why people have to have the no gun zone, because people don't follow the rules and they're still going to come in there with a gun or a knife and they're still going to do it. And then what are you going to do? You can't protect yourself against the bad guy because it's a no gun zone, but people are still going to bring a gun in a no gun zone. That's what criminals do. They don't follow the rules. They feel entitled and then they want to cause a ruckus. So I don't know why it's such like a battle between protection and like, oh, but we don't like the police. To me, I'm just like, bring the armed guards there, shoot up that person who's going to be coming and being disruptive on campus. So I don't know. That's my opinion.